Good evening, everyone. So I will establish protocol. Dr. Michelle Gittins, head of the Department of Computer Science, Math, and Physics, senior lecturer in computer science. Professor Avril Williams, head of the Department of Biological and Chemical Sciences. Dr. Henderson Carter, head, Department of History, Philosophy, and the chair of the 60th Anniversary Planning Committee. Miss Kelly Connolly, or Johnally? Johnally, I do apologize. I had notes and I didn't see the name, so forgive me. Head of Advertising, Nation Publishing Company. Miss Paulette Jones, Miss Kelly Johnally, Business Development Manager, Nation Publishing Company. Miss Paulette Jones, Head of Advertising, Nation Publishing Company. Again, my mistakes. Dr. Shane Austin, Lecturer in Biochemistry, Faculty of Science and Technology. Members of senior management and staff at University of West Indies and the Nation Group. Miss Nicole Bailey, Director of Trading Program, Government Quest Global. Mr. Wahab Al-Mutadi, President of IEEE Canada. Representatives of I Am Girl Foundation and Investment Barbados. Student representatives, Faculty of Science and Technology Student Committee, specially invited guests, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 8th Legacy Lecture. It is my pleasure to be your mistress of ceremonies this evening. As you know that for the 60th anniversary, we have been having these lectures, and it is my pleasure to start the program by inviting Dr. Tara Innes to give the welcome remarks.
Hello, good evening. All protocol having been established, it is my very great pleasure to offer a warm welcome once again to all of you joining us this evening, either here in our presence or online, to the University of the West Indies 60th Anniversary Legacy Lecture Series in partnership with the Nation Publishing Company Limited and our other valued sponsors. This is the penultimate lecture in our series, and I'm very proud to say that we are once again exploring issues of gender and access within the university space with another lecture encompassing gender and technology with the topic women and technology. In fact, our series has now had the majority of its contributions come from women from all facets of academic life on campus, including 2 lectures now being delivered by women in the Faculty of Science and Technology. As the chair of the subcommittee that organized the academic program for this lecture series, I am very pleased that we have had such a high caliber of offerings from my fellow female academics. But I must say that I'm not surprised. My colleagues have explored aspects of culture, the development of SERMIs, or natural resource management, in Barbados and the Caribbean, themes of artificial intelligence, gender and disaster management, and the contributions even of the development of the law faculty. And now I very much look forward to the lecture being delivered tonight by Dr. Michelle Gittins. In another lifetime, many moons ago, I once coordinated the course Science, Technology, and Medicine in Society for the Faculty of Science and Technology. And I used to deliver the module on gender in STM. We looked at women as practitioners in science, technology, and medicine, and their varied experiences both globally and regionally. And we looked at how aspects of gender positioned women and men as both scientific subjects and objects. In one critical piece of research that I shared with students, there was a very, very curious demographics on campus. With the exception of computer science, maths, and physics, where women were only on their way to achieving parity with their male counterparts, male students still outnumbered female students in that department, and all other departments on campus, female students outnumber male students. We explored why this might be in class, and students shared their experiences within this field of study. Were they reluctant pupils in maths and physics in the primary and secondary school systems? Were they being discouraged even though they expressed an interest in these subjects? I now look forward to learning if anything has really changed. As our lives become more technology dependent, are girls and women finding a place in building our digital world? I'm sure Dr. Gittins will help us to find out. So without any further ado, I now turn over to the main event and back to our chair and welcome you once again to the University of the West Indies Cave Hill campus.
Okay, we will now have remarks from Ms. Kelly Johnally, Business Development Manager of Nation Publishing Limited. It must be noted that the Nation Publishing Company has always supported the university in a lot of the lecture series, and we want to thank them again. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Protocols having been established. We had a little joke about that on the side. Thank you to the university for hosting this lecture series, for including the nation, and by extension, extending the opportunity for me to give these remarks. New technology adoption and digitalization are at the core of the core drivers of transformation in the workplace at all levels. In every organization, we cannot avoid it. It is now at the heart of media and at the heart of the narrative about media. When people talk about the future of news, they're talking about how technology is shaping the news, how it should shape it, and then they make predictions about how it should be done. It's the same in education, so I don't envy you. I actually think you have the harder end of the stick. Had you told me earlier in my career, or when I was at UE 20-ish years ago, emphasis on the ish, that I would ever be a part of a conversation of women in technology, I'd be like, you'd have to be kidding me. Like, when I tell you I did so badly in sciences, it looked like I actually made an effort to do badly. But the bigger question is, why would I be a part of that discussion? What would ever be the relevance? When I came to UE, I think we had not even started saving assignments on diskettes. So the thought of women in technology was not something on the horizon. It had nothing to do with me, and I was not a student in STEM. Fast forward 20-ish years, I can say the conversations that we're going to have tonight are certainly conversations we should have started having from back then. And we are very happy that we can have them now. Technology has created a convergence in roles within the workplace. Roles change and expand based on the technology that underpins them. And with the growth of tech-adjacent jobs, like mine, you have more women being brought into the space. And yes, there have been some positive changes. We do see more women in tech roles in Barbados. But that is just what we see. What we don't see is the fight that it took to get there, and we do not see the fight that it takes to stay there. The reality is, and I'm sure Dr. Gittins will expand on this because we had our side chat, women remain underrepresented in the tech industry, not just in the Caribbean, but on a global scale. And the reasons behind this are multifaceted, ranging from historical and gender biases to systemic barriers that persist to this day, things we often don't care to acknowledge. If we were having these conversations 20 years ago, collectively we would be better off. Some of us may have been spared a lot of stress and a lot of tears, and I know for certain organizations would have saved a lot of time and a lot of money. We cannot get back the time, but I think if we put the right foot forward, we can recoup some of the money. This sector holds immense potential for economic growth, job creation, and social progress. But this will only be achieved if we have a level playing field. Dr. Gittins, we look forward to your presentation.
I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Michelle Gittins. She's a fellow colleague in the Department of Computer, Math, and Physics. And meeting her when I first came, we were women who just kind of just said hi, passing by, and then we got to know each other. And it's been a pleasure working with you. So I look forward to this session. All right, so Dr. Michelle Gittins obtained her BSc in Computer Science from the University of the West Indies, Cave Hill campus, right here. And then she moved on to Western University in Canada, where she obtained MSc and PhD degrees in computer science. She is a senior lecturer in computer science here at Cave Hill campus, University of West Indies. She's also the head of the Department of Computer Science, Math, Physics. And what you don't know is that she is the first female head that we have in computer science, math, and physics. She is the chair of the University of Cave Hill ICT Committee. She is a former adjunct research professor in computer science at Western University. She was also a lecturer at the University of Waterloo in Canada, and at the time she served as the campus representative for MentorNet, a portal for upcoming computer science female students and professionals to engage in mentoring. She recognizes that she stands on the shoulders of many, those who are diverse and individual, and those who are present and past. Her research and development topics include mobile applications for the management of non-communicable diseases and personal efficiency, including resource monitoring, systems for the distribution of health food to customers, IoT, and software quality. Her interests are expanding to software, testing for applications in gaming and AI. That's the new hot topic, and she's already in it. She has recently served on the organizing committee of the Institute of Electrical Electronic Engineers IEEE Gaming, Entertainment and Media International Conference for the offerings in Barbados in 2022 and again in 2023. She is a senior member of IEEE. Dr. Gittins has a patent in software quality with IBM and has published and spoken at several international forums and organized conferences, workshops, tutorials, including several at IBM and CASCON. She served as program committee member for international peer-reviewed conferences, including HAS 2014, 2015, and 2016, and ISSRE 2011. She was a proceedings co-chair for the A-STAR International Conference in Software Engineering 2019. Dr. Michelle Gittins is also co-lead with Dr. Curtis Gittins of the Smart X. It is a human-robot interaction and lifestyle management technologies research lab here at UWI. Now, I can go on to list a ton of things that she has done, but mostly I wanted to make sure that everybody recognized, and Michelle has recognized, that gender equality and gender involvement is key. And we can put up the website that you can see all of her work, but I want to now welcome the distinguished guest and speaker, Dr. Michelle Gittins.
Hello, good evening, everybody. I want to say good evening to the audience that is sitting here, and I know that I have a lot of audience online as well, and I have to recognize them as well because I know a lot of them wanted to be here, but for various reasons, everybody has, lots of things going on. So I also want to say protocols having been established. I am really thankful for the long list of people who are here. And when I speak about standing on shoulders, those shoulders are sometimes yours. I see Professor Avril Williams sitting in the audience, and she is the first female head of biological and chemical sciences as well. And, you know, many persons go before us to pave a way, and we learn lessons from them. So I have to acknowledge all of them who are sitting here. I also want to acknowledge my colleague from Canada, Professor Wahab Al-Mutadi, who is the president of IEEE Canada. And Wahab is here visiting with us for that conference you just heard about, GEM, which is going on right now. Everything is happening in November, starting today. And Wahab said he was going to come across and support, and I'm really thankful for that. And I see so many other faces, family as well. But I'm here to share a story with you. I don't spend as much time in the classroom as I normally would love to, because I really love to teach. And so standing before an audience is energizing. You know, sometimes you feel a little bit shaky, but at the same time you recognize that this is not about me, this is about so much more. So I hope to share with you today, and I hope that you will gain something from what I have to offer. Okay, so you see the title of my talk. And I know that you would have come out because you would have been motivated, not just to see me, but to hear about this. And I remember when I went to Canada and I heard many people talking about, you know, having troubles and trials as females in our field. And I really could not understand it at the time because I was a student. And having come from the background that I come from, and having been to this university, I don't even know if I can say 20-ish, because I'm close to 30. The ish, I don't know. I have to square that or something. But yes, I went to, I graduated from Cave Hill in 1994. Next year will be 30 years. And having had the experiences I had here with so many good people back then, I did not feel out of place. But then when I step out, I really started to look around. And I realized what was going on, even here. It's just that I wasn't seeing it before. So I want to ask you a couple questions. All right, I'm going to ask you to name some of the leaders that you know about in computer science, in computing. Just give me some names. Bill Gates. That's the first one that comes off everybody's tongue. What's his company? Microsoft. He's not there anymore, but that's his company. Anybody else? Questrade. What's that? Yes, Freed. Who did you say? Sam Altman, yes. OpenAI, very current, very current. So many wows over the last week, all controversial. Okay, yes. Anybody else? More names, more names. Steve Jobs, yes, and everybody knows that Steve Jobs is the founder or one of the founders of Apple, yes. And there's so many names that we come up with, but if I were to ask you to name a woman, you would probably be lost for words, right? And it's not that there aren't women, but in a lot of cases, we don't know them. And they're just not enough, and that's why you don't know them. So we need to do something about that. Now, I have to throw in some of this stuff to let you know exactly what it is we do in computer science. Because what I find sometimes is that people actually don't know what it is. You have IT, you have computer science, you have computing, you have computer engineering. There's so many different terms, and often we don't know. They're all related. Computer engineering tends to focus more on the hardware side of things. Computer science focuses more on the software side of things. And so I am a computer scientist. Don't ask me to fix the hardware parts of your computer, I could do it. Give me a manual and I can do it. I change out parts and stuff like that. But I'd probably send you to this gentleman here who's trying to blend into the scenery. This is Mr. David Gardner from my department, and I'm so thankful my team has come out to support me tonight. But we are about software systems. We are about making them faster. We are about making them better. We are about helping you to do what you do and not even realize that the software is enabling you. So you have things like health informatics, artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things. You have as well database systems, and everybody has used a database even if you don't know. Nowadays, they're a lot easier to use than they were. You have graphics. We have a graphics specialist in the house, Dr. Shallery, who models weather systems. He's also trying to blend into the scenery. But we have so many fields. We also have social robotics. My husband works in that area. We have programming languages because we have to program with something. And we have bioinformatics, and I could go on and on and on and on because this field is big and this field is changing minute by minute. Now, I want to ask you to have a look at the scenario on the screen with me. I'm going to read it for you, and we are going to talk about it a little bit. So a father is about to bring his son to a job interview, applying for a position at a large trading company. Now, before I continue, how many of you have seen this before? Okay, good. All right. So just as they arrive at the company's parking lot, the son's phone rings. He looks at his father, who says, "Go ahead, answer it." The caller is a trading company CEO who says, "Good luck, son, you've got this." The son ends the call and once again looks at his father, who is next to him in their car. How is this possible? Yes, I feel like you've seen this, Thea. So this is a study that was actually done, and people were perplexed. People said, so the answer is it was his mother, right? But people were perplexed. People couldn't figure out who the CEO could be. Somebody said the question was worded badly and it was really his grandfather. Somebody said his name was son. Somebody said, we're in diverse times, it was his other father. Right? So there's so many things that people said. And then when they said to them it was his mother, people were like, come on. But it didn't even occur to a lot of people, right? So there's certain things that don't even occur to a lot of people, and sometimes computer science and female is something that doesn't occur. Here's another one. You know the answer now.
That last one, that was not nepotism?
Which, well, we would have to talk to the social scientists in the room about that and all the human resource practices and all of that stuff. But you know, he had to come from the bottom up. So the second one is another one, and I'm sure you know the answer now if you didn't before. A father and his son get into a car crash or rushed to the hospital. This one is a common one, so you've probably seen this. The father dies. The boy is taken to the operating room, and the surgeon says, I can't operate on this boy because he is my son. And this is a 50-year-old scenario, and people could not figure out that his mother was the surgeon, right? So, yes, ma'am?
Why can't she operate on him?
Because she would be too emotional. So, thank you for the question. So, we recognize that there are many things we have to consider as we talk about this whole elusive target. And we're going to get into this, but I wanted to kind of get you thinking. And for those of you who didn't get it the first time, that's our secret. Don't worry about it. We just have to see things in a different way. So here are a few more jobs. And I'm advertising as well, by the way. So um, if you hadn't thought about it before and you're a young lady sitting in the audience, I see another friend in uniform. I'm advertising. Yes. Now, we recognize that fewer women than men are in this field. And not just studying it, but also working in the area worldwide. And that's what we're about to discuss. So, as I said, when I left Barbados and went overseas, I started to realize it was a problem. And so then I therefore realized I had to approach this as a scientist, and I had to start looking at what the data was telling us about this particular problem. Now, have a look at this graph that I have here, and you will see that over the years, these are older numbers. I have newer numbers for you, but this is just to start the discussion. You will see that in the 70s, the numbers were quite low. The numbers went up in the 80s, and then, this is why I asked for a lapel mic. I can't, I'm a mover. Right, so the numbers went up in the 80s, and then the curve went back down. And over the years, this is what we've been seeing happening. The numbers go up, the numbers go down. But the numbers will never, or have never, broken 40%. So here we're seeing the percentage of women getting computer science or information systems degrees in the US. Now, the problem we often have is that we don't have numbers for the Caribbean. So these are some numbers we would have pulled a little bit back in 2016 for what was happening on campus. And you will see a very similar trend. So the bottom line graph is females, and the top line graph is males, and yes, they mirror each other. It is a percentage, so one is basically complementing the other one. And so we see that in 2004, we had about 40%, and then the numbers started to go back down again. And in 2014, we had basically 2014, 2015, we had our absolute dip. Does anybody know what happened then? Tuition fees. The students had to pay fees. And for women, that impacted them, I think, because you can see with the men, it wasn't at the peak there, but yes, it affected the women more. And I actually saw that in my classroom. I think it was because people were helping at home and they really couldn't afford to pay their fees. And so we saw it go down. And it has started to rise. But when I last looked at the numbers, we were still in the 20s, the 20% range. So this is not unique to the Caribbean. And those of you who are in tech and have sat in classrooms here and sat in classrooms overseas, you will know that these numbers for the National Science Foundation, their study showed that only 24% of the people enrolled in engineering degrees were women. Only 21% were in computer science, and 24% were in physics. And what I would say to you is that the department that we have here coincides very much with these particular statistics that were studied by the National Science Foundation in the US just recently in 2023, and these are the kind of numbers we see. So it really almost doesn't even matter where you are. So this is what we want to talk about. This is why we are here. Now, the funny thing about this is that in history, believe it or not, the first programmer was a woman. Yeah, And her name was Ada Lovelace. Yes. So she was the daughter of, does anybody know? She was the daughter of a poet. His name was Lord Byron. And she knew a gentleman by the name of Charles Babbage, and he built a very large machine to program, and she was the first person to design a program for it. And women have been working in computing since then. We see Admiral Grace Hopper here from the US Army. She is very well known, and actually there's a whole organization around Grace Hopper trying to grow the number of women in computer science. And we saw, I don't know, I know a few of you may have parents who may have pictures of the old machines, for example, in Light and Power, that took up whole rooms like this. And it was the women who were working there because women went into data processing. And they were the ones that were doing the programming for the batch jobs that had to be carried to those machines in a big box. And they would feed them in, and that was how the programming was done at the time. So it's not that women never did it. It's not that women couldn't do it, but it's just that few of us do. And so, why is that? Now, a little bit more history, and I hope that this is opening your eyes. When I tell my students about history, they roll their eyes like, Henderson, I have to call you over. But yes, they don't necessarily want to know the history, but as you know, our history is what we stand on, and without that, we cannot grow. So can I see the hands of those of you who recognize this movie, Hidden Figures? If you haven't seen it, you must see it. It's inspirational. I remember singing the song over and over afterwards and just kind of feeling like riled up and really excited. But Mary Jackson, she was NASA's first black female engineer. And she started, and actually this is where the word computer came from. She started as a computer because she computed, right? So, you know, we are trailblazers in this area. And here are some more women with those big parts for those large computers back from the 70s and so the 60s and the 70s. And so we can do this, and so we need to ensure that more girls come into this. Now, I want to show, or I want to share a little bit of my own story with you, because I will tell you that I came to the University of the West Indies in 1991 and did my whole degree, and I did not have a computer at home. I lived in what we call the Roy Marshall complex. That was, the new lab was in there. We used to call it the new VAX lab. There was a big mainframe in there, and I would spend lots and lots of time. I would come down in the morning with my mom, who was going to work for 7 o'clock at QEH, and then I would come over here. I would spend the whole day in here. I would take the car back to her. I would come back, and I would be in there till 11, right? And I was determined to do that. And at the time, in retrospect, I realized that there were not that many of us as females at that time. So I was one in a low proportion of women in that BSc program. And then I went on to University of Western Ontario in Canada, and I got my MPhil in 1997. Why do these numbers make me feel so old? But anyway, I can't say ish. Oh dear, I am thankful for the years, that's the truth. And I got my PhD in 2004. Next year will be 20 years, wow. And the numbers were shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And I want to tell you that if you think that I was one of a few women, I was in terms of being a black woman, that was a non-existent percentage, right? So all of these things here, anomalous, 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 anomalous. And you see it, you recognize it. If you were oblivious before, which I am not kind of person that's generally oblivious. People are telling me things are going on. Like I heard that this was in the paper yesterday. I really should have known, but I am oblivious. Because I have my head down and I'm working, right? And I'm just generally busy. But I couldn't be oblivious anymore. I recognized that something was wrong and that we need to do something about it. Now, I also want to tell you the more of my story, because sometimes I want to say, Thea read, I think I was making her tired with that. I'm sorry, Thea. They ask you to send a bio, and you write down what you have to write down, but then you hear it, and you're like, oh, why did I send all of that? But you hear all of that stuff, but there's a story behind it, right? And you don't start where you end up, and I still haven't ended up yet. I'm the daughter of a nurse and the daughter of an electrician who's sitting in the audience. And I'm also a proud product of plantation families. My family is from St. George and St. John. And these are big families. Each of my grandparents worked on a plantation. One of my grandmothers was a butler. Yes, she was a butler. When I say that, people say, you sure she was a butler? Yes, she was a butler. And the other one was a cook, right? We are the Herewoods and the Williamses, right? And we are big families. The siblings to my parents, they are 8 or 9. There are quite a few. Back then, that was normal. Everybody had a lot of children. That was their wealth, you know? And so the foundation is that each one of those families had a certain pride, and they worked hard, right? And one side, which is my dad's side, said girls and boys, but this is what I observed. They might tell me something different, but when I came along, this is what I saw. Girls and boys can do anything they set their minds to. That is what I was seeing in their house, because my grandmother worked, right? She didn't work outside of the home, because she did that butler work. There's a long story there. She was good at math. She said they weren't paying her properly, and she went home. They were supposed to pay her more, and she said, none of that. She went home. So she worked out of her home. And I saw a family that said, we will support you, and all of you can do what you set your minds to. So from this came women and men, who are my aunts, my uncles, my dad, and an infrastructure where a family could rise, right? So those are messages that I was getting, even if they weren't said to me. Now the other side, my mother's side, slightly different. So hard workers, but a woman has her place. Girls are supposed to do certain things. They will be treated well, but they're supposed to do certain things. And from that came my mother, who said, And she said, so my father's name is Victor Harewood, and my mother's name, she's passed now, Jessica Undine Williams. That's her first name, Harewood. And so she rose to become a senior sister at QEH. And you could not tell my mother she could not do something. Even as she got older, you could not tell my mother she could not do something. Her mantra was, perseverance seldom fails. And she worked hard to build a foundation for my brother and myself. So she built toughness, right? Resilience, perseverance. And there's a reason why I'm telling you these things, because these are important things that we have to have, important characteristics. With my dad, he's an entrepreneur. So, girls can run with their dad and go anywhere. You can go into the cane field, you can go on the job, you can see the engines being fixed, you can say, Daddy, what is that? Right? All of that is my background. Now, a couple days ago, if I was telling you that story, I might have had to stop and take a few more breaths, because it is really my foundation, and it does cause some emotion. And remember, there's a reason why I'm telling you this story. So now, I am the wife of a single-minded and supportive husband. I'm telling you these things for a reason. Not so that you can pass Curtis on campus and give him a big up. You should do that, though. Anyway, and he's a computer scientist himself, right? I've known him for a long time. We're not going to go into the issue of that, because my children can calculate. They're already doing it. Let's just say I've known him for a long time, right? So focused and understanding again that women can do anything, right? I'm the mother of 2 girls who are here this evening. We pulled them along and carried them to everything. One of them went to the conference this morning, right? The other one went to the registration for that conference yesterday evening. Well, both of them went. And they too are feisty, single-minded, and hardworking. I think my daughter is behind there crocheting something right now to sell. Anyway. Oh dear, I'm making her blush. She could be like, Mommy. Right. So all of this has made me into a citizen of Barbados and the Caribbean and the world who does not take for granted the pride that makes no wanton boast of what we have withstood. This is a serious thing. And so whether or not I am female or whether or not I am male, I will contribute, right? And this is something we all need to remember as females and also as those who surround the females. I may have been anomalous, unique, whatever. And for me, perseverance seldom fails, right? I'm oblivious. So when I came on campus into my class, and I got up in the morning and I decided I can put on a green tracksuit, I can put my hair in 2 pigtails, and I don't care what anybody say. And I go into the front of the class and asking the most questions because I don't care. That's me. It's no deterrent for me, right? That's my upbringing. But it is a deterrent for others, right? I want to stop to acknowledge somebody else who's here. This lady here was my hairdresser from the time I was down here. And she came out to support me tonight. You believe that? I call her Jackie Batson, but she has another name too. It's Juliet Batson. That's the Bajan sweet name. Yes, ma'am. So the harsh truth is that women and certain minorities, thank you for coming, women and certain minorities in CS are rare, right? It's been documented and documented. I'm not going to go into all of that. Minority women, the numbers are small as well. You can see here again. So I'm pulling numbers from all years. For you to see, it didn't just happen in 2000. It didn't just happen in 1970, whatever. It didn't just happen in 2022. It's just on and on and on, right? The numbers are low. For women and for minority women, even more so. So, why? Why? So I'm going to approach this from a certain angle. And honestly, when I started off with this presentation, you would have been mad at me at the end because we would have been sleeping here tonight. But I can't do that to you all, so I'll try to go through it as fast as I can, focusing on a particular thing or a few particular things. So we talk about things like few or no role models, and this is a harsh truth, right? Here in the Caribbean, yes, when we go into our classrooms, we see people that look just like us, but worldwide, this is not necessarily true. I will tell you a short story, and I heard Julian Rogers said he's a storyteller. Now, I'm not Julian Rogers, and I can't talk from Ready Fusion to AI. But I have my stories to tell too. And there's a story of a woman who walked into a university library. She was on staff, and she went to borrow some books. She carefully picked out her books because she had some work to do, and she is oblivious. So she walked to the counter to borrow her books. Everybody else going to the counter to borrow their books. And when she gets there, she is told, you have to get a letter from your head of department. And she said, are you sure? Here is my ID. And the person looked at the ID and looked at her and said, this is not enough. And she said, are you sure? She was a bit shaken because that was weird. And so she said, go and call your supervisor. The supervisor came. The supervisor looked at the ID and said, give her the books. Right? But what happened there was that that person had never seen a lecturer in that field that looked like that person. Right? So this is a testament itself to not having mirrors if you're outside of the Caribbean, where, you know, we have a majority of people that look like us. And so you can imagine how students tend to feel. Now, the study I did was based on my two experiences. And so I did a study in the Caribbean and in Canada. And what I was trying to look at was that very thing, which her experience motivated me to do, right? So in the US, Black, not just women, PhD graduates are 1.5% of all PhD graduates in CS, right? In Canada, there's 3% more. Yay, Canada. But clearly not enough, right? And this is so for some particular minorities. And I have to say some particular because not all, right? Now, you would expect coming to the Caribbean that this would not be so. Now, I looked at how many PhD, this was 2016, and some of you are already smiling, I hope, because you knew something happened recently. In 2016, there had been no female PhD graduates in CS or IT. And at St. Augustine, there were at most 2. And at Mona, in 2016, there would have been perhaps at most 2 as well, right? But, I mean, you know, PhDs are happening. So it's not as though no PhDs are happening, but they're just not females. So this, I should have changed that from harsh truth. Because we proudly graduated Dr. Sherry Maynard in 2023, just now. Right? I don't know if Sherry is watching, but kudos to Sherry and her supervisor as well, Dr. Depredine. And this is not a talk about other disciplines, but I have to big up Dr. Carol Connolly, the first female PhD graduate in my department in physics, which is another area where we do not have enough women. I'm sure Carol can come and do her own talk, right? So we are really proud of them. We've come a mighty long way. So we acknowledge that there are few role models. It is so in academia. And if we study in academia to get to industry, it is so in industry. I do have to acknowledge, however, that a lot of women don't start in IT and computer science and computing, but they come that way, in that they will do graduate degrees and those kinds of things and come to that place. But, you know, I saw this when I was writing this. I smiled, and I somehow didn't change it. It says more mirrors, like more mirrors, more mirrors, more mirrors. That's what we need. That's not what we have. We have no mirrors, no mirrors, no mirrors. So we need more female role models. All right. So this affects the ladies because, honestly, for an oblivious person, it doesn't make a difference because I can do what I can do. But for other people, for some other people, they're thinking, can I really do this? I ain't seen nobody here that look like me, though. Right? So female role models are always helpful. And this is in any field. It's not just computer science. So whatever you do, and Nicole is shaking her head, this is a woman who is in industry in computer science. So she knows what I'm talking about. So we need consistent representation, not spotty representation. And so you will see that I speak about regular academic staff as opposed to others. No, I'm not trying to come down on anyone, but we need people that have long-term contracts so that they can be seen consistently and they can get out there consistently. Let the girls see them consistently, right? So this is what we need. And we need this in the minorities as well, here and abroad. So this is the chapter I wrote in 2016. This is why a lot of my numbers look like 2016. But it was called Standing Alone in Computer Science Education. And there were so many things when I spoke to women that resonated with me, and so many things that I realized needed to happen. Now, there's a problem here, though. When I started doing this study, and even when I was trying to get data for today, there's not much data. And can you tell me why there's not much data? Because there's not much women. Right? So I recognize that we need to do more of these studies, and not just myself, everybody. I am not stingy about the research, right? So I did an initial survey. Well, not an initial. That initial work surveyed women in the Caribbean and here. And so there are some things that I want to pull out from this about, and when I say the Black women's context, I'm not trying to push anybody in the corner, but because this is very personal for me, this is where I'm standing. But at the same time, I could be speaking about the Latino woman's context as well, all right? I could be speaking about the context of the Black man in North America, right? The Latino man. So I will speak from my context because that is what I know, but we definitely need to do more, right? So there are social issues that have been studied and show that the stereotype is very much there. Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg, everybody else that you guys mentioned, those are who people see as computer science and IT and so on. And we as women, we as Black women, I can't say we as Latino women, but Latino women have a view of what is the normative population for this group, right? And it doesn't look like us, right? So people feel out of place. Also, girls often receive contradictory messages. And what I want to say to you is if you have girl children, stop it. Right? And if you don't do it, that's good. And tell somebody else to stop it. I had a student, a guy, and he didn't mean anything bad. But he looked at me, he said, "Mom, why you want to do this? Why do you want to do this?" And I said, "Because I love it." And he was so puzzled, right? And these are the messages that we pass on to our girl children, that it is not normal, right? And they get it from parents, they get it from teachers, they get it from the media. I was somewhere yesterday, and the images I saw of women, this is not just about computer science, you know, Black women gyrating and whatever. That is what a lot of people think is the normal thing for us to do. And so when I stepped into a classroom in the University of Waterloo, they're like, "Really?" You know? When you get a Black man stepping into a classroom in North America or in Canada sometimes, they will say things like, what was the one I heard? "He speaks English good." Funny, yeah? Because they could even speak English good. So these cultural issues, contradictory messages. So also the culture of how many women like to work collaboratively and so on. And really, when it comes down, I'm getting the, raise the mic. When it comes down to it, yes, I did work from 7 o'clock to 11 o'clock in that lab, right? And there are a lot of people who might not want to do that. And a lot of it was by myself. And yes, a lot of it was with help. But you have to be able to work by yourself. Then there are other socio-cultural, financial issues that cause problems. I said I did not have a computer at home, right? But thankfully I had access to a car. So I took myself to the computer, right? But we could not afford it at home, right? So that's not, what was that? I said I graduated in 1994. It still happens now. We have students in our classes who cannot afford computers at home. Male and female, by the way, right? So when you see Bill Gates looking like he did it all himself, and his mother was an engineer, and his dad, no, they had means, right? These things don't just happen. So when we look upon ourselves and think we can't do, look at what is really going on, right? So infrastructure is very important, financial and otherwise. Now, as I said, one would think that the numbers you would see between Canada and here would be different, but they are not. So we get fright and we get flight. There are self-biases, there are external biases, they come from stereotypes. And I want to say this is women in general, not just black women, all right? I want to say this, and I don't know if this is politically correct, but you used to hear about the dumb blonde. I know a lot of blonde people that are very bright, right? A lot of blonde women. Professor Jo Atlee at the University of Waterloo, awesome. She's one of my mentors, right? So let us stop doing these things to ourselves. Get rid of the gyrating images all the time and let people see themselves as being able to do more, right? So the stereotype threat comes from this, will be caused by this. So it has been shown that if you tell a bunch of students, if you could separate students and you tell some of them, you know what, you really can't do this. And you tell the others, you are awesome, you're a guru, you are going to kick this. And you send them in to a test, who's going to do better? The ones that you told they were going to do better. And it seems so simple, and you think people would strip and walk off and go and kill it, but stereotypes make a difference in that way because although people may be mentally fighting against it, these stereotypes work on their brains, right? So a lot of women fall threat to this. High ability women fall threat to this. You guys have heard of the imposter syndrome? I was just talking to somebody about, all the women are like, yeah. Yeah. You know, you're high ability, you're smart, but over there, sorry guys, you know, but you have a bunch of guys saying, I can kill it. And the women are over there going, I don't know. I was studying for 2 weeks and I don't understand this last question. There are 100 questions, but this last question. And the guy's like, man, I studied last night. I can kill it. You know? So we got to stop that too. We got to encourage. And guys, keep saying you can kill it and kill it. That's not what I'm here to talk about. Kill it. It's about us and us taking care of ourselves. And then you also encouraging us and saying you will kill it. Right? So stereotypes and so on are an issue. And in programming in particular, I hear it all the time. Girls saying, I ain't so much about the programming. I think I want to be a project manager. Nothing wrong with being a project manager. But you have to know your technical stuff first in order to be able to tell somebody what to do, right? We can't all be managers. Somebody got to do managers do work too. I'm a manager. So we have to let them know that they can do it, and we have to encourage them. All right. So the other problem, and I'm going to move a little bit quickly through some of this stuff, but We must have more role models. And that's one of the reasons why I'm standing up here, because I want people to see me. I am doing it, right? It's not always easy, trust me. It's not always easy, but I am doing it. So we need to go out there and say more of that. My deputy dean, I'm sure you're heartened to hear that. Yes, I'm ready to go when you're ready to send me. Ms. Atherley, I'm ready. So the other thing is that in addition to, I said this before, we need to have longevity of staff who are female. And the other thing that has come up as an important thing is internal motivation. Now, don't get me wrong, and don't say this, that I said women are not motivated, because women are motivated. Women are motivated. But motivation, again, gets eaten away sometimes in the classroom, right? Also, character traits. Sometimes you're soft-spoken. You're not out there talking to people about how you feel. Like, you know, I really struggled with that question. And then you hear somebody else say, I really struggle with that question too. But sometimes, or that problem, sometimes you stay in your space because you think you can't do it and you think you're the only one. So, personal goals as well. And you know that, again, I remember, and I keep talking about going to Canada. It's not because a lot of these things necessarily had to do anything with Canada, but it was just the time of life I went. I left here at 21. And I was hearing people talk about their biological clock. And I didn't really think about it that much. I was just doing my work. That's another story for another day. But these are things that women think about because it's very real, right? There's a time. And so those personal goals influence what women want to do. So that motivation, when you're thinking about, and I found out later that not just girls or not just women, but men too, come to university sometimes expecting that, you know, they will make relationships. That's part of university life. Me, on the other hand, with my untidy pigtails and my green tracksuit, I just thinking about programming, right? But people are thinking about these things. So, you know, they're not motivated when they have to spend from 7 o'clock to 11 o'clock in the lab working on a problem. So all of these things will affect motivation, internal motivation. You have to be willing to fail as well. And I think just culturally, that's an issue we have here, which is also another discussion. Failure is part of life. The program don't work, don't cry. Look at the error messages. They are your friend, not a judgment of who you are. Right? The computer is not trying to tell you that you're the worst programmer ever. It's trying to actually help you by saying, on line 1, you missed out a semicolon. And I'm so thankful, computer, for telling me that, right? Not that you should know that you have to put semicolons in, right? Don't feel judged. So we have to learn to deal with that. And a lot of women have said in the studies, and it's not just me saying this, you see, Ryan said it in 2011, that failure is discouraging. All right? So, attraction and commitment to the field. We also need to go out there. So not just to the schools. I recognize as a head of department that I need to engage with my female students and help them to be committed to the field. And then also familial support. That's why I told you this story at the beginning. Because I think above all the other things, this is the one, right? They need stability, they need finances, They need people who will lift them up, right? And encourage them to stay in the field. This last point here, support of a parent is crucial to a woman choosing to pursue a degree in computer science. It is crucial. Long hours. What are you doing out there with all them fellas in that lab? Right? Why you can't home so late? Right? And for what? So you could go and keep doing that for your career? Right? We have to support the girls. Daily life is not always like that. You have times of crunch, and you have times where, it is lighter. We need to engage girls in these experiences early so that they can experience what CS is about. So I mentioned the raising of a family. What I have seen as I was trying to find data on the Caribbean is that a lot of our females are excluded early because of early, like teenage pregnancy, right? And this is something that just like how we are concerned about the boys on the block, we need to be concerned about the girls that are not on the block, what they're doing, right? We need to make sure that they are properly engaged. So I am aware of the time. So I want to just say that support is very important, not just to the starting of the field, but to longevity in the field. And I'm not just talking about going to PhD, I'm talking about from bachelor's into the work world, even if you don't do anything else, and actually sticking it out. And one thing I would say is that I recognize that because without that support, a lot of the time you have to spend doing your work is time that you have to take away from something else, so you need support. So we really must not allow our females to be afraid of this area. It may seem like a lot of, they used to talk about pocket protectors, those don't exist anymore, but a lot of pale guys, black and white, because they don't get no sunlight, in a room programming all night. There was a lot of fight, flight, night, yes. But we've got to help them to fight. So there's so much to say, but this study that I did, I surveyed professional organizations in Canada, I surveyed universities, I surveyed universities here, and there was some deep work done, and the same things just kept coming out, right? All right, so the things I really want to get to are the messages, the stories that came back. We looked at the women who came in to computer science and the women, their peers who left. We asked them a number of questions about things like their biases or how they perceive biases. So the women that we studied, in a lot of cases, they said the biases did not affect them. They were confident, they were determined. Remember what I was telling you about my own upbringing? This is why I was telling you those stories. Because you have to be confident, you have to persevere. Parents need to treat girls and boys equally at home. Parents need to prioritize the education of girls. But these women, far from being pushed away by negative stereotypes, were kind of like what I said about my mother. You can't tell me not to do that, because I can do it, right? Again, back to the upbringing. Now, another thing that I want to highlight here is mathematics. All of my colleagues in the Faculty of Science and Technology, we understand mathematics is a problem, right? Mathematics is a problem because it will block you from getting into science and technology, period. And it will definitely block you from doing computer science, right? So, you know a lot of our system here, I have to be honest, tends to focus a lot of the resources on those who are getting through the mathematics. Because those are going to be the Barbados scholars. Those are going to be the ad math people, right? But it kind of turned upside down. If you didn't get through with math, you need help, right? So they need the best teachers if they're not getting through. This is not just women, this is everybody, right? Because you're blocking people from getting into the field, which means you're blocking the country from innovating. The peers now thought that CS was not for women. They believed that the field was just for males. They felt aware of this is in Canada, they felt aware of their ethnicities in the classroom because they were standing out. They believed it was too difficult, right? Because of my upbringing, I remember I have a friend who said, Michelle, you choose everything that is difficult. I thought Spanish was too easy. I didn't want to do it. I did French. I saw the difficulty in how people were putting together the computers and so on. I say don't do it, but I can. That fascinated me. It was complex. That just fascinated me. For some people, they run, right? So again, think of these things. And the reasons why we need to do this is because they're great opportunities. But the peers will say to you things like, you're in a dark room programming, I don't want to do it. It's daunting, I don't want to do it. It's time consuming, I don't want to do it. They're great opportunities, but because of everything else, I don't want to do it. It's overly difficult. Well, I don't agree with them on the it's boring. I think it's exciting. If you think it's boring, don't do it, as full stop. So, in terms of their experiences in education, this is another thing we asked about. They felt that their teachers made the difference. And I just am going to highlight that in all these things here. So I myself take that as a responsibility. And then I have to pass that on to other teachers that are earlier in the system. I have a few things here. There's a parent who said that, a lady who said that her dad had 3 girls. And she's from Africa. And the neighborhood thought that was a disgrace. No boys. By the way, people always ask me, so when you can get the boy? I ain't getting the boy. I good. My husband good, I good, we good. So they kept saying to them, when you can get the boy? And they didn't get the boy, and they said, you know what, we done at 3. And each one of those girls thrived because, I think it was because of what people were saying. So for her, that pushed her on in computer science. Another person said she had some negative experiences. A teacher slapped her because he didn't understand the math problem. She got it out, and he was embarrassed, and he slapped her in her face. But that, again, was like, who tell you to do that? You know? So she really pushed forward. So in a lot of these cases, I heard stories of people who were just determined, had familial support, and so on. For the women who didn't do it, again, they said that math was a hindrance. So we recognize we have a problem. People were influenced by what they saw in the field, as I said, in terms of what the people looked like. But for the women, it wasn't an issue. For the peers, it was an issue. So some people just, people are different. The women who went into computer science wanted to reach great heights, and they already knew what they wanted to do. They fell in love with CS because they were exposed early, whereas a lot of the peers had no exposure to CS, right? So a lot of the characteristics that you see with young ladies who want to go into this field is that They have a self-described strong personality. And if you see something up there, by the way, that I kind of move forward quickly through, and you want to ask me afterwards, you can. Self-described strong personality, meticulous, inquisitive, affinity for logic. Yes, the computer science mind is very logical. Perfectionist, they're driven, they enjoy challenges, independent workers, problem solvers, aspiration to achievement, and so on. Right? So a lot of their peers weren't really interested on going on these unusual paths. The other thing that helps is professional organizations. And what I would say is that it doesn't necessarily have to be a female professional organization. Just a professional organization in CS, which kind of brings you into the fold, that helps. We have to work on that in the Caribbean. There's some good people out there doing some good things, like Barcode. I'm going to give a shout out to Shannon. And they don't really care if you're a woman or a man. Come, let's code, we good. Right? Okay. So let us understand that the familial supports are very important. We need those who are going to cheer for you. Everybody says this in Canada and the Caribbean, in the US too, this is not from my survey, but from the literature. And then they need to see the joy of programming, so we need to expose them early. I had my daughters programming from early. Probably got a bit tired of mommy right now, but they still are very much into tech. That's very important. And mathematics, make sure that they enjoy math as well. I know some people can't fathom what that really means, enjoy math. It is possible. If you find at school that your child is not getting through, they can't understand the teacher, find a resource for them. If it's auntie that knows a little bit, let her help. If you don't have the resources, if you have the resources, send the children to lessons. Just do it. Right? Math is so important. So math and programming needs to be something they understand from an early age. And the truth is that it has been found that middle-class families are the ones that these women tend to spring from. It doesn't have to be upper middle class, but just so that there is some kind of base where they can feel free to not have to get a job immediately, and feel free to fail, and feel free to experiment. So if that is not there, if you see girls, and just children in general, because although I'm here talking about women because I'm a woman in CS, we need to support our children in the Caribbean to be in this field. And so if you see children who are failing, help them. And just do what you can in your church communities, in other things like the Optimists and those kinds of things. Because it has been found that the women who tend to stay are usually from some form of middle-class family. And the peers have been found to not have the resources. So we want to make sure that there is no discrimination against women in the classroom. We don't want messages that tell them that women can't do math, and women can't do computer science, women can't do tech. Okay? It compounds other problems and also affects their confidence as well. We also have to expose them from early. Okay? Their schools and their communities have to make a difference. We in the university have to make a difference. Although there's time commitment, there is joy. So we have to expose them to the joy. And we have to make sure, how do I put this? We have to make sure that those who are teaching them from early have the joy as well, Let's just put it that way. Right? In both mathematics and the IT. I know we are pushing for everybody to do tech, but if an educator is just not their thing, you know, they may be a fantastic, I'm talking about, because we're starting at primary school, they could be the best primary school teacher and they're just not getting the tech. Don't force them. You need to bring in tech teachers. It's as simple as that. And not the IT support technician only, who has a million other things to do. That person may want to and love it, but they have no time. So we have to resource our system so we're getting the best. Innovation doesn't just happen. We have to resource our system. Okay? Some of this is what I spoke about before. But the other thing that has been happening is that I know that, you know, in not just Barbados, but in small island developing states and developing countries and so on, funding is low. But I think that what all of our Barbadian students don't realize is that every one of them gets a scholarship. Everyone gets a scholarship. You know, like how Oprah used to say, you get a car, you get a car. Bajan students are like that. Yes, we highlight certain people in the nation at a certain time of year, but that is how it is. As long as you have the qualifications, we are out there giving out scholarships, right? So free education is not free, I know, but the access to our education that does not require repayment, there has to be a balance. And I'm not saying that everything should be free, because I don't believe in that either, because then sometimes you don't even value it. But at the same time, we need to continue that funding source so that both girls, boys, whoever, because remember who dipped in 2014? It was the women who dipped the most, right? So we have to make sure that with the realities that females have, responsibilities at home and so on, that we continue to provide funding sources that don't require repayment. And if they require repayment, that is manageable. Because as I said, believe it or not, free ain't free. Right? I just wanted to share a little something. I had an undergraduate student, and I like to mention names. I have some really good students, male and female at UE. This young lady's name is Shanice Mason. And for her undergraduate project, she was looking into this. I talked about all those highfalutin places and associations at universities, but she just asked some informal questions to students from 2 schools. And, you know, she just wanted to know what they thought about women in computer science. So the question was, do you believe that girls are as good as boys in computer science? Remember what I was talking about male bravado and, you know, easy hotness and all of that? She went out and she asked. So the females answered the question. They said that no. But in majority. But it's kind of equal there, so that's okay. I think some of them are still thinking about it. I do want to give a shout out to Mr. Taylor, I think, Harry, very good IT teacher from Dighton Griffith. I think he's still there. And the guys didn't necessarily think the girls could do it. But so the girls were more positive on it than the boys. And at Parkinson, they were like, yes, man. Right? We could do it. Right? So we need more of this. We need more of this. And look at that. The guys were in the majority on the yes. Right? So we need more of the purple in all of the schools. This is not a scientific study, Dr. Scantlebury Manning. I know, I'm waiting. Oh, yes. It was a question asked. But we have some good teachers out there. Um, and the students are believing in themselves. And we need to encourage this. And I think it doesn't just fall to me as a computer scientist. Because as you know, computing is in everything now. And we have all sorts of fields here. And it is in everything. So we need our girls to just survive in the world, to know that they can do it with the technical stuff. So we need school outreach. We need to utilize these groups like Sisters and Web Girls, Mentionette. The Association for Computing Machinery it's worldwide. They have pushes for this as well. We need to get our girls involved. The Grace Hopper Conference is one that, if possible, ladies should go to. That's after the Admiral. And we need to study it. I know I need to study it more, right? Because when we study it, we understand what those issues are, and then we can answer those issues, and then we can get an equal playing field. And I know sometimes when we give these talks, the men feel as though we're beating up on them, and that's not what we're doing at all. Because as I said, I have a dad that's supportive. I have a hubby that's supportive. The guys are out there. We have Dr. Shane here, who is our outreach deputy dean. And one day he came up to me and said, we've got to get out there and get to girls in ICT. And I said, Shane, I didn't know that this was one of your things. But, I mean, the guys recognize it as well. We had an award ceremony, and one of our students, Tayton David, he said, as a guy in science and technology, I have noticed that there are not many women. And the guys are noticing it. I think they want company. Right? So we need to have that diversity. And I mentioned blacks and other minorities. We need to have that diversity. So BIPA has had this focus. We will do more outreach to the schools. CARICOM Girls in ICT, I've been on that committee. The other Dr. Gittins has been on that committee. And if you want to be part of it, you see I've put my email here, because we need to get together and make it happen. So there's hope. We must support our girls, and we must believe in ourselves. That's a whole other talk, because as Caribbean people, Alan Emptage, you guys know him? Yeah, we can do this. We are smart people. We can revolutionize tech. It's a whole thing. Girls, women, men, boys, we can do this. So let's climb. And I also want to say kudos to all of those who are fighting alongside me. No fright or flight, let's fight. And I want to say thank you.
All right, thank you, Michelle. So we will now open up the question session. Are there any questions in the audience? I will also keep track of any questions coming from the online audience.
Makes you wonder. Usually a man is the one who would open the car's door and go to the lady, and she's coming to me. That's so good. Dr. Gittins, thank you so very much for the talk that you've had today and the many important issues that you have raised. And there were quite a few, I must admit, and good prospective solutions towards some of them. But I think one of the major lessons that I got here, and I'm hoping that everyone did as well, is that this problem is not, it's not a Caribbean problem, it's not a Barbados problem, it's not a UE problem. the number of females, I don't want to say girls alone, but females in general, in those fields across the world is very small. And I've had the opportunity to see this in Asia, in Africa, in the United States, here in Barbados. It's the same story all over the place. But I am encouraged because when I was an undergraduate student, the very first course I did in computer science was Introduction to Computer Science CS 100. Now, you guys came in after me, so I'm not sure if that course was still around when you guys came in. But there were 125 of us in that class. And of 125, there were only 5 girls in there. I look at my classes now, and it's more evenly divided now. We are still a long way off, but I'm seeing the numbers increasing. I'm looking at this group we have here, and you may realize that it's disproportionately positive towards ladies. So I guess as a man, you have to be very careful what you say going forward. Clear exit to make sure that, some of us can run when that time comes. I just want to raise this other point with you, and that is the issue that we have now does not appear as something which can be corrected incrementally. It seems this is such a deep-seated issue, and it's not Barbados. It's the entire world which is like that. You go to all those different countries, and it's the same thing. And it's not because there are not good examples. You mentioned Jackson at NASA. You mentioned Ada with computer science, Curie with radioactivity. I mean, there are a suite of ladies who have excelled way beyond what the average man, I don't want to compare men against women, but what the average scientist would have been able to achieve. And they've done that. So we have those examples. I think one of the major issues that we have is in the training of girls, and I'm referring to girls specifically since that is your topic, we are taking too long to get them involved in mathematics. I have been told, I'm not a social scientist, so I'm going by what I have been told, that in the early learning period of children, girls tend to excel over boys. I don't know how true that is. I've only had girls myself, so I couldn't compare them against any boy. But I think at those early ages of 3 and 4, that they should be introduced to mathematics. They should be introduced to the things which will lead them towards logic and the things which will be the gateway to computer science and any other science discipline for that matter. And I think we are waiting way too long for when they start preparing for common entrance to be focusing on mathematics, when mathematics should be concentrated on from 2 and 3 years old coming up. So maybe we cannot cure this thing by simply adding a new Band-Aid to it, but we might have to cut it out and start over again. So tell me, what do you think about that? Long-winded question, but.
You said it's long-winded, but I think you had something to say because of your own experience, so not long-winded at all. I think our approach to mathematics in general, not just a matter of timing, it may not be the correct one. We don't approach math for the love of it. We approach it because we have to do it, right? And from early, it's a flogging. I've heard people say they go into fetal position when it comes to mathematics, right? And so we associate it with certain things as well, and this may be why, I'm sure the IGDS would have a lot to say about these things, which is our gender studies unit on campus. But we tend to associate certain tasks with what girls should be doing and certain tasks with what boys should be doing. And I have to tell you, and I'm talking about things like buying Barbies versus buying trucks, right? And the pushing around of a truck and the doing construction in the yard is a mathematical task. If you're building something, if you're putting up blocks and those kinds of things, you may not be doing calculus, but you have to do calculations. and there's logic there. So everybody needs to be exposed to those kinds of things, right? So the teaching is not so much for me an issue of the formal teaching, but it is in terms of exposing children to logic, the ability to see how calculations can occur. And some of these things, I mean, I knew I spoke about those things that we say are for some and not the others. But I remember when my children were at school, the teachers said, have them cooking with recipes. And everybody should be doing that because the chemist can tell you, well, you're a biologist, a biochemist. The chemist can tell you. She's both.
Yes.
The long and short is, yes. But it is chemistry, it is mathematics, it is creativity, it is all of these things. So I think that one is one about our philosophy of education, how we approach it. I think this is why the Montessori method works so nicely, because children learn from their experiences, right? So mathematics is one of those things that they will learn from their experiences within that environment. So I think we really do need to rethink it. I remember, I'm getting long-winded now, sorry. But I remember when my children, so I have a 10-year-old and a 13-year-old, and when, you know, the 10-year-old is clearly still in primary school, but when my first daughter was doing mathematics, I heard so many parents saying, oh my goodness, they changed the math. How could they do that to me? It was bad enough the first time, right? But they didn't really change the math. It's just that they're doing it differently. When you look at the numbers, the way the relationships are the same. Instead of putting something at the bottom, you put it at the top, right? And so we tend to do things a lot by rote, and that is not mathematics. So we need to get away from that earlier, teach them about problem solving. And I think what you're saying, Dr. Shallery, all that needs to be done from early, let them solve problems from early. All of it, well, I'll have to ask, this is probably you again, the way the brain works. In terms of all those connections that need to be made, we will make them very early in the brain.
Any other questions from the audience? Can I ask you to take the mic here? It's a better situation. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Okay, so I am currently doing a master's in e-governance for developing states, and I'm a regional student. And I relate with many of the things that Dr. Gittins would have said in her presentation regarding the biases and the things that women and females experience with respect to studying and being in the field of computer science. However, despite my field not being computer science, I have a particular interest in information technology right now because my research topic would be more of a multidimensional concept that has strong holds in information technology, computing, networking, and information systems for ICTs. And now I am considering studying something with respect to information technology, but I still have that fear. I have a fear of maths in general, and I was so happy that I got a grade 2, so I didn't have to redo it at CSEC. So I have a fear of maths, and how can I navigate moving from, because I would have done a bachelor's in communication studies that I am doing e-governance. So now how can I navigate moving into information technology more so at a graduate level coming from my background?
Okay.
Thank you.
So this sounds like we need to make an appointment in my office.
I agree.
But I'll give you some advice. Okay, so there are many degrees out there. and I mentioned this earlier, that a lot of women do not start in tech, but by some other route, they come into tech. So you will find that there are MBAs in IT, there are analytics degrees. We also have an MSc in IT. There are many areas where if you have interest and some, you have to have some of the background, because as our dean will say, our deputy deans, and I will as well, we don't want to set you up to fail, right? We want to make you get success. We want to make you be successful and build your confidence as well. But sometimes it is also possible to do some undergraduate courses to shore up what you need in order to go into those masters. And this is not just our program. I've seen this in other places where there may be a diploma or a certificate you can take to fill in your necessary background, and then you can look into a master's program. So if it's something that you're interested in, I would be happy to sit down and have a conversation with you. And I know, depending on what you want to do, there are others as well who can share some of that advice as well. What is your name, if I may ask?
Oh, Finidi Williams.
Finidi?
Yes.
Okay,
thank you.
Finidi.
Thank you
So,
very much.
yes, my office is just over there.
Okay, thank you. You will see me.
Well, it's closed right now.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for your lecture and your sharing your experience. I was wondering to what extent you're aware of this education transformation project that is being launched by the Ministry of Education. I went to one of the public discussions recently, and I was kind of struck to see that robotics and coding was actually included at every stage of the primary and secondary and pre-primary curriculum. And I thought that was great, but I was wondering, do we really have the resources in our schools, the kinds of, as you said, the passion that is going to allow, my daughter, for example, loves Roblox, has convinced me to download it for her. People love playing video games. They love doing apps. They love their phones. But to what extent are they really appreciating that there's a whole science and mathematics and coding, technology understanding behind that gets you the result, but there's a lot of effort there in behind the scenes, and that you need to be passionate about the behind the scenes in order to get the result, the value of the. So I was just wondering what your feeling is about how that's actually going to be translated into a so-called transformation of our education system. Because as you said, we can't call in the IT person to do that job. We have to have educators who are willing to go the next level with mathematics and robotics and coding education.
Yep. Okay, so you might have seen my face change when you asked me that question, because I'm very serious about that. And so in a general way, I will say that sometimes we believe we should do a thing because it needs to be done, but we should not. That is not to say it should not be done, but it is how we do it, right? Now, I believe that even pre-reading, children should be introduced to concepts. When a student comes to University of the West Indies, and all universities that teach computer science, they are taught concepts. I'm going to be a bit long-winded, because you've really hit something that I think is important. They're taught concepts. It's not a matter of knowing how to program in Java. It's not a matter of knowing how to program in Python, or whatever the new flavor is, right? All those are good languages, but computer science changes so fast. So concepts are important. So this means from the time they are in infants, you need to be thinking about back to problem solving, right? There are exercises that can be done on paper to say, I have to say that I have spent some time working with children as well, because I don't think that we caught on that we needed to do this early enough. And I see, so my children, before they could talk to me, could take my phone and do things I didn't know it could do. And I am a computer scientist, right? So I recognize that if we waste that talent and resource, and the fact that it's in their blood, that we are wasting time, right? Now, we need to think about what we are teaching children. Is it about Scratch? Is it about Minecraft? Is it about, again, a particular flavor? No, it's about problem solving. So if we start with that from the time they're very young, then we would start moving in the right direction. So this also means that in terms of the training of the teachers, back to mathematics and things related to it, there has to be an understanding of that, right? Okay, so you start in infants where you're teaching them problem solving. If I have to go from here to the airport, if I have to give you those instructions, what are the instructions? Are you going to say, go and catch the bypass bus and go across there and you will get to the airport? No, you have to have an algorithm. You have to give step by step. You have to understand the logic, the repeatability, and all of those kinds of things. These are the concepts that need to be started very early. Children need to understand, back to logic, back to that kind of problem-solving thinking, not by rote. Don't just do the problem because these are the steps that I know, and so I'm telling you how to go from A, B, C, and whatever. So from there, we need to move on to the actual implementation, right? So we have to understand what our contexts are in the Caribbean. We can spend a lot of money on a lot of things, but those things break down. And then will the children have them to have a continuity in terms of their education? So whenever we're doing this, as you said, Dr. Innes, we need to think about the resources that we actually have. And so perhaps things like Raspberry Pis and Arduino boards and those kinds of buildable technologies are where the children need to be going, right? Now, I don't have a problem with the integration of the coding and robotics. I know someone has said to me, but really, do all the children really need to do this? I mean, you know, they're not going to go into that. My daughter hates that. I don't want to. But the thing is, as I said, it underpins everything these days. So they need to have that understanding. But we really need to think about our context, where we are. We need to build. I keep talking about FUBU, for us, by us. Somebody is, who is that? That was P. Diddy? Mm-hmm. P. Diddy can come for me because I keep using it, right? But we need to think about what we can afford. We need to design the solutions based on who we are here, and we need to make sure that we will have that consistency that will carry through right from the time they're infants, right to the time they get to us, right? So that they're building and building and building. Because I'll tell you what, once that child gets to reading and they can actually start coding, what adults can do, they can do. I've seen it, right? So it means that we have got to take this seriously, and it's not about the new flavor. It is something that needs to be built in now, because innovation, and this is another topic. When you asked me for a topic, I was trying to decide what to talk about. And I find we use the terms, we talk about innovation a lot, and we talk about wanting to, you know, be the next Singapore and stuff. I think that's great. But at the same time, we have to think about what we have. We can do it, but we have got to go through with the hard knocks from those children when they're infants. Let them fail, let them keep failing. I mean, you don't want to keep failing exams, but you understand what I'm saying. Let them understand they're going to build it, it can break. Let them understand your computer is not going to blow up. Let them understand the integrated circuit that they are creating things with. They may break it. And have the patience with the process, not just because you have to take it off on a curricula. But you know what? That's a huge discussion, Dr. Innes. Thanks for the question.
Before the next question, I have a question and a comment from one of our viewers online. So they said, how do you address the stigma against IT?
Oh.
One, firstly, IT is usually seen associated being under a desk pulling wires, so it may not be appealing to some women. And if I mix that with the other comment, more needs to be done in the school. So how can we do that? Because if they don't understand what IT truly is, then why would they be interested in it?
We need to go on an adventure together. I need to take you and let you see the people pulling the wires, and then I need to show you where the wires are going. And then I need to show you, so the wires are going into a network that is supporting a system that somebody else is programming for, and you need to see that person programming. And then when they program, you need to see how they interact with the users of that program. And then you need to see how that system is, for example, helping someone in the hospital, how that system is creating a mobile app to help a diabetic. You need to see how we're developing games to teach people. We had a talk this morning about simulations that help train nurses and doctors on certain procedures. You need to see how they're used in banking. You need to see how this technology that we're using here right now, when I came down and I was helped by the marketing, the media team, how all of that is computing and IT. And I am expanding the term because people say IT, people say, man, I could fix that computer, so where you gonna go and get a degree? I remember somebody said to me, doctor in what? I said computer science. They said programming, doctor? And the person looked at me like, how could you get a doctorate in that? Because, you know, they're thinking, I could do a little thing, what was that? But I mean, if you are not seeing what, let's not just talk about ChatGPT, that's what everybody is talking about. Look at, you know, self-driving cars. Look at your car, period. The fact that now you hook up a unit to it and it tells you what's wrong with it. There's so much, it's so much. So I think that if you are not sure what it's about, that you need to call me and we need to go on an adventure.
I hope that answers the question for online. I wanted to raise one thing, and that was your contradictory messages, particularly to girls, and the concept of culture that we have here. The idea of failing is not seen as a way to learn from. It's taught as you are not good enough. Okay. And I think you're going to need to, we are going to need to, as a society, need to change that thought. Because the idea of doing a problem and not, you know, not succeeding at it, but keep going and trying different ways to look at it will help not just girls, but everybody. And I find that girls, because of the contradictory messages, kind of pull back when, you know, they think, well, I can't do it. Not living up to the standard, well, if you can do that, I can do it better. And I think that is something that we need to keep pushing. But your idea, your comments about role models, it's vital that that whoever's a mentor or a teacher, those really do make a difference. And I think you have made many differences when I speak to some of the students, and I think we need to keep pushing that. Teachers, mentors, people in society, you don't have to be in computer science, but if someone wants to be in computer science, just keep pushing them and encouraging them to do better. That makes such a big difference. So keep going, Dr. Gittins.
Can I speak to the possible contradiction? What I want to say is that we all have to meet a standard. That's why I said you can't keep failing all the time. You have to learn something from the failure, right? So you have to analyze how that happened and then get up. And it's about the getting up. And when something is being delivered to you, for you to learn that lesson, instead of having, so you can also learn from the failures of others, right?
Agreed.
And so there's value in that too.
All right. Are there any other questions? Why, thank you.
I wanted to make a comment this afternoon.
Are you sure, Professor Williams?
Since you forced me to.
So a very short comment, because I just wanted to hone in on the importance of a role model. So just to give you a story, and I'm not making this about me, I'm a chemist, by the way, but I like to think that I dabble in IT somewhere, because some of my research has to do with moving towards the quantum computer and the molecular computer. So it was not too long ago we had another event up here, and there was one of our students who was volunteering, so she was over by the caterers, etc. And when I was finished and we went over to that side, she asked, "So you are a professor in chemistry?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Well, I didn't think that any females could become professors in chemistry at KFL campus. But now I know, and I can do this." So that made me feel so great. Not because of my accomplishment. No, that was not it. But this is the reason why we do what we do.
Yes.
And I think role models are extremely, extremely important.
Yeah.
And my second comment, I said I had one, but my second comment was, I think that institutions, whether it be private sector, government, educational institutions, have to look at how, or maybe contemplate that everybody's circumstance is not the same. So when you have what we would call the perks, the amenities that come along with your job, everybody may not be able to utilize it in the same manner. So writing down on paper that this is X, this is your perk X, but it can only be used this way and that way, I think disadvantages women to a certain extent. So I can tell you that being in chemistry and being doing laboratory-based research, that if I don't have the resources, then of course I have to look further afield. But how many of us as women can pick up ourselves for 2 months and say, okay, I am going abroad for 2 months to do research? Not a lot. But the men, males, seem to be able to do this very, very easily. Yes, so I think that there is a disadvantage there, and I think that we have to relook at how we can introduce more flexibility. And I have not even spoken about women with families and children. How do you pick up yourself and just go for an elongated period of time? But I think that's something that it's kind of touchy and will require a different approach, but I think it's also important.
Thank you very much, Professor Williams. And we have to really take those words seriously. And this is exactly why I shared my story. Because, you know, when you look at a lot of the things that people in general have to do, advice is given as to how you should live your life, but sometimes we take things for granted, right? But at the same time, what I want to say is where we are now is not always where we have been. And that's why I think the role models and the mentors, so I say mentors as well, are very important, because when you engage, then you can say, this is how I did it, right? I remember purchasing a book when I was on campus with a colleague, I say a colleague, and it sounds so fancy. A fellow student and I purchased a book together because books are expensive. And he would have it half the time, and I would have it half the time, right? When I was an undergrad. That was not every book, but that particular book was real expensive, right? Some of them you can get from the library. So what I'm trying to say is, we stand as role models, Professor Williams and Dr. Scantlebury Manning and other women who are sitting here as well, Dr. Aline, Dr. Innes, because it's not just in computer science. And they're all of those persons who want to get to where we are. But we also need to look back and say, this is how I did it. And this is why I value mentors so much, because people who can say to me, this is what worked, then I have a little bit of an edge, right? And I don't have to go through everything they went through, and I can succeed. So we need to role model, and we also need to, in that role modeling, mentor.
Dr. Austin, is this a quick comment?
I was trying to I was trying to reserve my comments, but then I heard Professor Williams speak, and I thought, okay, at least one of them I probably should make. And it's in relation to something that she said, though, about, and I think it also comes back to something that Dr. Shallery said before he left, and he asked a question. I'm not quite sure you addressed it, Dr. Gittins,
Okay.
about we seem to be at a point where the change that's necessary probably needs to be more than incremental. And we probably do need to make some kind of radical change. So my question to you is, what are your views on, like, how can we really make a change so that we get more of these women in positions that can act as mentors for a lot of the students that we have there, with a view ultimately to increase the number of female students in the discipline? So what change do you think we need to make, or how do we go about those changes?
Okay, so I'm going to answer that question from a personal point of view. What I would say is there are many things that I listed there. I talk about familial supports. I talked about breaking down stereotypes. I talked about understanding cultural biases and a bunch of different things. This is where I am going to steal somebody else's mantra and say we just have to do it. Because what happens is we're all in a matter of limited time, especially when there are few of us. And we understand the different issues, and we chip away bit by bit at, as the old people would say, one blow does kill old cow, right? You ever heard that? Okay. But at the same time, well, the poor old cow, perhaps we need to kill it faster, because we need to get together. That's really what has to happen here. We need to have a more concerted effort that happens with more of us, right? So that's where now we have to pull in women from industry. We have to pull in the academics. We have to get even the students involved, the ones that are making the way. At University of Waterloo, they have been able to create a women in computing office, right? And so the university has put money behind that. So it means that we need to work together. That's really what it is. Because as you can see, the problems we have here are common. That's what Dr. Shallery said as well. And so we need to get together to do what we have to do. And I think that's really where we'll make more leaps and bounds.
Okay, I make my way over here. So I'd like to call on Dr. Shane Austin for closing remarks.
Good evening, everyone. I know that we've been here for Is everyone hearing me clearly? Okay, perfect. I know we've been here for a while, and it was a very invigorating, very exciting discussion. Thank you very much, Michelle, for that. But I want to say some formal thank yous to everyone who made this event possible today. So I'd firstly like to start with our sponsors, and those would be the Nation Publishing, Caribbean Cuisine, and the UWI Cooperative Credit Union, who made this 60th anniversary event possible, as well as a number of other 60th anniversary events. So thank you to the sponsors. Secondly, I'd like to say thank you to our lecturer, Dr. Michelle Gittins, for giving us a really insightful talk, encouraging us to think about some things as it relates to technology, and particularly the involvement of women in this field. So thank you. I'd also like to thank our chair and Deputy Dean of the Faculty of Science and Technology, Dr. Thea Scanton. There are several UWI departments that brought us the services that we have here today for the persons who are joining us virtually, as well as those of you that are here physically. So those include our Marcoms department, our Educational Media Services, the UWI Security Team, the UWI In Place Department, the Sidney Martin Library, and lastly, the UWI Ushers, who all ushered you to your positions for those of you seated here today, which are Ms. Kathy Ann Long and Samantha Ali. So I'd like you to thank all of them. The 60th anniversary events were organized by our organizing committee. Special thanks should go to several persons are involved in that, obviously, but there's some few key people that we probably should be especially thanking, and those are Dr. Tara Innes, Ms. Patricia Atherley, Anne-Marie White, Toika Ford, and Shelley Brathwaite. And lastly, I'd like to thank you, our audience, both virtual as well as those of you that came out this evening to be here with us physically in attendance. Thank you very much for coming. At this point, I'm going to ask you to all travel home safely, and perhaps before you leave, join us in some light refreshments. Thank you once again, everyone.
Before you all go, I have to make a small announcement. Just reminding you of the next lecture on Wednesday, the 29th. Here, 3Ws at 7 p.m., we will have Nicole Foster from the Faculty of Law. The lecture will be entitled, The Cave Hill Law Faculty, A Legacy of Excellence, Charting New Paths for the Future. So just giving you information on that. Thank you, everyone. Safe travels.